we continue to summarize the climate changes that became unprecedented in 2024. This year has demonstrated an unparalleled scale of climate anomalies worldwide. Initially, we planned to release a single comprehensive overview of all natural disasters to show how their frequency and intensity have changed. However, it soon became clear that it was simply impossible to cover the entire volume of information in one article. The events of this year are not only striking in their scale, but also prove that the forecasts made by scientists 10 years ago were surprisingly accurate. For more details on the catastrophes that occurred in 2024 and how they affect us all, watch this issue. Tropical hurricanes. Tropical hurricanes, like many other catastrophes, occur during specific months of the year. However, recently, and especially in 2024, the boundaries of these seasons have become blurred and chaotic, making it significantly harder to predict and prepare for these events. In the Atlantic, the hurricane season traditionally runs from June 1st to November 30th, peaking in August and September. However, in 2024, the situation unfolded differently. The season began with unusual activity. In June, an extremely powerful hurricane, Beryl, struck the Caribbean countries, followed by Mexico and the United States. In the Atlantic Ocean, it became the only Category 4 tropical hurricane in history to form in June, as well as the earliest Category 5 hurricane in this oceanic basin. The storm claimed the lives of dozens of people, and in the midst of the season, in August, an unexpected calm set in, which puzzled climatologists. However, it was followed by a sharp surge in storm activity. A record for this time of year was set when, after September 25th, 7 storms hit the region. The last month of the season, November, was also unusually active in the Atlantic, with the formation of a tropical storm and a Category 3 hurricane. For comparison, on average, only 1 tropical storm is recorded in November, and hurricanes of Category 3 or higher occur only once every 5 years. These phenomena are gaining strength and becoming increasingly destructive due to the energy that the overheated ocean provides to tropical cyclones. According to recent studies in 2024, the intensity of all 11 hurricanes in the Atlantic significantly increased, with their maximum speed rising by 15 to 45 kilometers per hour. As a result, 7 hurricanes reached a higher category, and 2 tropical storms strengthened to hurricane level. The typhoon Yagi, which formed on August 31st in the South China Sea, reached Category 5 and caused immense destruction in several countries. In Vietnam, it brought catastrophic rainfall. As a result of the storm, at least 300 people lost their lives, and hundreds more were injured. This typhoon was distinguished by an exceptionally large outer radius and maintained its status as a super typhoon for an unusually long time, almost 64 hours. This was the primary cause of the extensive destruction. Typhoon Kongray became the most powerful typhoon to hit Taiwan in the last 28 years. The radius of its maximum winds reached 320 kilometers. This was the distance between the center of the cyclone and the band of its strongest winds. This case marked the first time in history that such a powerful typhoon struck the island in such a late period of the season, late in mid-October. Oceans with overheated waters create favorable conditions for the rapid intensification of hurricanes. Such rapid intensification of hurricanes is becoming an increasingly common occurrence, especially in 2024. The destructive consequences are especially dangerous for coastal areas. This trend of rapid intensification is clearly evident in the tropical hurricanes Helen and Milton. Hurricane Helen became the most powerful hurricane in the history of meteorological observations in the state of Florida. It struck the coast on September 26th, but just one day before, it had intensified from a Category 1 to a Category 4 hurricane. The hurricane turned vast areas across 6 states into disaster zones. The damage caused was enormous. In North Carolina, Helen caused the strongest floods in the last 100 years. The economic damage from the storm for the state amounted to $59.6 billion. Helen claimed the lives of 225 people. Less than 2 weeks later, the residents of Florida once again felt the powerful impact of a storm. Hurricane Milton shocked meteorologists with its rapid intensification even before making landfall. In just over 12 hours, it strengthened from a Category 1 to the highest Category 5. Milton triggered an unexpectedly powerful tornado outbreak, as well as a dangerous storm surge. However, the worst-case scenario was avoided by the state's residents, thanks to a large-scale evacuation and the fact that the hurricane weakened to a Category 3 before making landfall. Tropical Hurricane John, which struck Mexico on September 23rd, became one of the most terrifying tests for the residents. Firstly, no one was prepared for such strength from the storm. Forecasts indicated that John would remain a tropical storm and quickly dissipate after making landfall. However, just before reaching land, it rapidly intensified to a Category 3 hurricane in just 18 hours. Secondly, the unexpected resurgence. Several days after weakening, the hurricane almost calmed down and moved back into the ocean, but suddenly re-intensified and struck the country for a second time. This behavior led to it being classified as a zombie hurricane. Thirdly, Hurricane John caused extreme rainfall in the states of Guerrero and Michoacán. The residents of Acapulco were in despair when the rains hit the city. They had not yet recovered from the devastating damage caused by last year's Category 5 Hurricane Otis. However, the amount of rainfall from Hurricane John exceeded 950 millimeters, which was 3 times higher than the rainfall during Hurricane Otis. It is worth noting that only 3 hurricanes in the history of observations have struck the Mexican coast near the city of Acapulco. 2 of them, Otis and John, occurred in the last 14 months. This fact highlights a new worrying trend. Tropical cyclones are increasingly making landfall in densely populated areas that were previously considered protected from such disasters. The major port city of Kaohsiung, located on the west coast of Taiwan, was traditionally considered safe. Typhoons are extremely rare there. However, for the first time in 47 years, the powerful typhoon Kraton dealt a severe blow to this region. This occurred in October 2024. The typhoon moved extremely slowly, at a speed of only 4 kilometers per hour, which led to unprecedented torrential rains. In just a few days, some areas in the affected regions received up to 1,690 millimeters of rainfall. Experts emphasize that such a volume of rain in such a short period is rare even for Taiwan. This is why the consequences of Kraton were so devastating. This typhoon clearly reflects another trend. Even if a cyclone does not make landfall with maximum wind speeds, it can still cause significant damage and destruction. Severe dangers come from extreme rainfall and storm surges, which lead to massive flooding. This is because most casualties are caused by flooding itself. The year 2024 became the year of a sharp increase in the cascading nature of catastrophes, where one destructive event follows another, leaving regions no time for recovery and turning them into zones of continuous disasters. In the fall of 2024, a series of destructive typhoons struck the Philippines. In less than a month, the country experienced 6 typhoons, with 4 of them occurring within just 10 days. These typhoons brought such torrential rains that they caused widespread flooding. The storm caused significant damage to the country's economy, and at least 171 people lost their lives. The Philippines often faces extreme weather conditions and is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world, but the series of typhoons this year was exceptional in its scale and intensity. Landslides. Intense rainfall and devastating floods are only part of the problem. As massive volumes of water saturate the soil, it becomes unstable, inevitably leading to another deadly threat: landslides. In just a matter of minutes, such events can claim hundreds or even thousands of lives. Heavy rainfall on July 21st and 22nd in southern Ethiopia triggered a series of devastating landslides. The disaster claimed the lives of 249 people, while more than 15,000 others were affected. The first landslide occurred in the morning of July 21st. Several homes were buried, and local residents remained trapped under the rubble. As many people arrived at the scene to assist the victims, a second, even more powerful landslide suddenly struck the rescue area. This caused the exceptionally high number of casualties. The situation was further aggravated by the lack of specialized equipment. In a desperate attempt to save their loved ones, local residents manually dug through tons of rubble and stones, using only shovels, picks, and sometimes even their bare hands. Even more tragic was the series of landslides on July 30th in the Wayanad region, located in the southern state of Kerala, India. The cause was also unusually heavy rainfall. The landslides struck at night, burying homes where people were sleeping. More than 400 people were killed, and over 150 went missing. One of the landslides was so powerful that it blocked the Iravanjipuja River, changing its course. The redirected river swept away the village of Cheralamala. Early in the morning on May 24th, a destructive landslide wiped out a village in northern Papua New Guinea, literally leveling it to the ground. The residents, sleeping in their homes, were buried alive under tons of mud and rocks. The landslide covered an area of about 9 hectares, with the thickness of the mud layer reaching 8 meters. The disaster affected 1,400 households and 7,850 people. According to the country's government report, more than 2,000 people died. In the 11 months of 2024, a record number of deadly landslides were registered, 728 cases. This is visible on the graph, where the black line shows the cumulative number of landslides in 2024, and the gray lines represent previous years. Abnormal rainfall and flooding. As the oceans warm, they intensify evaporation processes, causing the atmosphere to become increasingly saturated with moisture. This leads to a sharp increase in the amount of abnormal rainfall observed in recent years. In 2024, 27 countries in tropical Africa faced unprecedented rainfall, significantly exceeding historical norms. The heavy rainfall caused flooding, affecting about 11 million people, of whom 2,500 lost their lives. Millions of hectares of arable land were submerged, and hundreds of medical facilities and other critical infrastructure were destroyed or severely damaged. In Europe, the number of intense rainfall events has increased more than 50-fold over the last 25 years. The intensity of rainfall has reached an unprecedented level. It has become a common occurrence for the monthly rainfall norm to fall in a single day. The new reality is much harsher. Now, within just a few days, or sometimes even within a few hours, the entire annual amount of rainfall can occur, radically changing the climatic reality of the region. A striking example of such changes was August in the Chinese province of Liaoning. In Huludao District, Suizhong County, the annual rainfall amount fell within just 12 hours, setting a record since the beginning of meteorological observations. A similar situation occurred in the Italian commune of Giare, in November 2024. In just 6 hours, nearly the entire average annual rainfall was unleashed on the residents. In April 2024, a rainfall record was set in the Iranian province of Sistan and Baluchistan. In just 3 days, nearly 4 times the region's annual rainfall amount fell. In many regions, the infrastructure was simply unprepared for such massive rainfall. One could blame the utility services, but undoubtedly, even with the most well-prepared drainage and sewage systems, it is impossible to process such volumes of water. On November 19th, the city of Zichron Yaakov, Israel, was hit by 196 millimeters of rain in just 4 hours, almost 60% of the region's annual rainfall. This record-breaking downpour became a historic event for the country. Despite the measures taken in advance, the drainage systems could not cope with the abnormal volume of rainfall, leading to widespread flooding. On August 10th, Cyclone Otilia brought heavy rains to St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region, Russia. In central St. Petersburg, within just 20 minutes, the amount of rainfall exceeded the capacity of the city's sewage system by 3 times. In Sudan, at the end of August 2024, after abnormal rainfall, the Arbat Dam collapsed. This caused significant damage to the infrastructure of the city of Port Sudan. While responsibility for the incident could be attributed to the operating services, the main factor was the extreme anomaly. The amount of rainfall for that month exceeded the average annual norm by 5 times. What is especially shocking is that such extreme rainfall has been recorded even in traditionally arid areas, including the largest deserts in the world. In the Kufra region, located in the Libyan desert, on August 11th, a record amount of rainfall, 51 millimeters, fell in just 1 hour. This exceeds the average rainfall for August by 15 times. In the arid Tibesti region of Chad, even in the wettest month, August, rainfall usually lasts no more than 2.5 hours per month. However, in August 2024, the rains persisted here for more than a week. In the Great Victoria Desert in Australia, more than the annual rainfall amount fell in just 4 days in March. In the African Sahara, on the border between Morocco and Algeria, rainwater filled riverbeds and lakes that had remained dry for decades. In September, residents of the city of Taginit in Morocco encountered a true weather anomaly. Within a single day, about 4 times the annual rainfall amount fell. In April, the United Arab Emirates also experienced an extreme event, with 5 times the annual rainfall amount falling in just 1 day. The catastrophic consequences of such anomalously intense rainfall are inevitable. A tragic example was the flooding in Spain, where the Valencia region received more than the annual rainfall amount in just 8 hours. The storm caused widespread destruction. The city's streets were covered in tons of mud and blocked by rubble from homes and mangled cars. The flood claimed the lives of more than 220 people. The situation is further complicated by the fact that the actual amount of rainfall often significantly exceeds forecasts. This makes floods so sudden that people don't have time to evacuate. They fail to react in time, not believing that the water can rise so rapidly. On October 17th, residents of the Ardèche department in France endured a real nightmare from which they could not recover for a long time. In the village of Limoni, everything was calm at 9 a.m., but within an hour the water level rose by 2 meters. In some homes in the village of Anon, the water reached the ceiling. People had to be evacuated by helicopters. On that day, for the first time in the region's history, a red level of danger was declared simultaneously in 6 departments of France. In September, the Italian city of Faenza was flooded so quickly that many residents were forced to leave their homes by boat in the middle of the night. Cascading effects are also observed in the case of floods. In 2024, the time between disasters shortened, but their intensity increased to such an extent that the recovery of infrastructure and the economy could take not just months, but even years. The floods in Emilia-Romagna are a clear example of this trend. September 2024 brought the region its 3rd major flooding in just 16 months. The residents of the area are in despair, having barely recovered from the deadly flood in May 2023. They were once again struck by a devastating disaster. In many regions of Saudi Arabia, 2024 has exacerbated the ongoing series of nearly continuous destructive storms and floods. This is particularly striking given that nearly the entire country is characterized by a desert climate and is considered arid, with scarce rainfall primarily occurring in the winter. Floods are increasingly disrupting the usual seasonality. This trend is also observed in other natural phenomena: wildfires, tornadoes, abnormal temperatures, and other climate anomalies. Details on this are covered in the first part of the annual Climate Disaster Review. In China, floods began 2 months earlier than usual in 2024 and were significantly more powerful than in previous years. In the Pearl River Basin, 6 major floods occurred as early as April. 2 of them became the earliest and largest floods since the start of statistical observations in 1998. The consequences of such floods were enormous. In July 2024 alone, nearly 23 million people across the country were affected by torrential rains, floods, and landslides. Tanzania traditionally experiences two monsoon seasons, in the autumn and spring. However, in 2024, the continuous heavy rains from January to May terrified local residents. The resulting floods destroyed more than 51,000 homes and damaged over 76,500 hectares of agricultural land. At least 155 people lost their lives, and hundreds were injured. In 2024, the scale of flooding reached unprecedented levels, sometimes covering vast areas of countries. In the spring of this year, Kazakhstan was hit by a disaster that affected more than 70% of the country's territory. Hundreds of settlements were submerged, dozens of roads were destroyed, and nearly 100,000 people had to be evacuated. The massive flooding lasted for nearly 2 months and became the worst in 80 years. Flooding in Russia in 2024 affected 64 regions. Nearly 150,000 homes and household plots were submerged. Spring floods in the Orenburg, Kurgan, and Tyumen regions were record-breaking in the history of observations. Yakutia also suffered from massive floods that submerged villages that hadn't experienced such events in decades. At the end of April, Brazil's southern region was hit by abnormal rains, and as a result, the state of Rio Grande do Sul was almost entirely submerged. It was a tragedy. 169 people lost their lives and 800 were injured. Throughout the state, widespread flooding washed away roads, destroyed bridges, and caused numerous landslides. In the state's largest city, entire graveyards of submerged cars appeared. Over 2 million people were affected, and nearly 600,000 were forced to leave their homes.
Que está tentando fazer resgates aqui nessa região. Agora há pouco a gente flagrou, inclusive, o pessoal desse helicóptero.
All that you have seen so far is just the beginning. What will happen to the planet in the coming years is reflected in the report on the progression of climatic catastrophes on Earth and their catastrophic consequences. This document is publicly available and contains all the necessary information, facts, figures, and scientific studies. Anyone who wants to delve deeper into what is happening can do so on their own. The forecast is clear. In the coming years, we will face an exponential increase in cataclysms as the planet has already entered its most critical phase. However, humanity still has a chance. The point of no return has not yet been crossed, but time is working against us. A solution must be found and implemented before we cross this threshold. After that, it will be impossible to change anything. Our planet is a unified system where everything is interconnected, and changes in one part inevitably affect another. This is why the problem must be addressed in a comprehensive manner. We must create conditions for open international collaboration among scientists so that all countries can work together to find a way out of the climate crisis. Now, each of us must take part in calling for the unification of humanity's scientific potential. Otherwise, we simply won't survive.